Hello, everybody. Today I want to talk about gaps, what they are, why they're important. Now, you've probably heard the expression that gaps refill, and it's true. A gap is price levels on a chart where there's no trading, right? Like if we look at this specific day over here, we see we close there and we open there. That's a gap down. We look at this specific day over here, we see we close there and the next day we open there. That's a gap up. Now, why would a gap refill? Well, in order to understand this, we have to understand two basic principles of the way markets work. One is that buyer's remorse can turn support into resistance, and the other is that seller's remorse can turn resistance into support. Now, let me give you an example here. Here we found support, okay? When the market went lower, a lot of the people who bought here decide that they made a mistake and tell themselves that they want to get out. But they only want to get out if they can do so for break even. They don't want to lose any money. So when the shares get back up to where their buying price was, they go to sell. So if we have enough of these remorseful buyers placing sell orders at the level that was support, it can convert into resistance. Here we can see it over here too. Support, people buy here, price goes lower. A lot of these investors regret doing so, and they tell themselves that they're going to get out at break even if they can. So they place their sell orders at the same level they bought at. And if there's enough of these sell orders being placed by remorseful buyers, the level that was support can convert into resistance. So this is a very common phenomenon. You can see it on almost any chart. Now, let's think about seller's remorse. Investors who sold here, so a lot of them regret doing so once the price moves higher. And they tell themselves, you know what, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have sold my shares. I'm going to buy them back if I can at break even. Or I'm going to buy them back if I can get them for the same price I sold them at. So if we have enough remorseful sellers placing buy orders at the level that was resistance, resistance can convert into support. So another common thing we can see on charts, right? Buyer's remorse can turn support into resistance. Seller's remorse can turn resistance into support. Now, how does this apply to gaps? Well, here we see some gaps down, right? The price went from here all the way down to here in 3 days. And there was price levels where there was no trading. Now, if there's no trading, there's no one who bought it there who's going to be remorseful when the shares go lower. If it didn't trade there, no one could buy. So when people start to see, or whatever news this was, when people start to realize, oh, gee, maybe that news isn't as bad as I thought it was, I'm going to go in and buy. Well, when they enter the market, there's not a lot of sellers around. You don't have those remorseful buyers placing sell orders. So that takes a lot of the supply out of the market. And the buyers are forced to pay higher prices, and that forces the uptrend, and we get right back through the levels we gap through. So gaps are price levels where there's not a lot of vested interest. So if someone comes in and they want to buy at a level that was the gap prior, there's just probably not going to be a lot of sellers around because there were no remorseful buyers because they didn't buy it because it didn't trade there. And then the same thing happens here. We gap down, right? So no one bought any shares in between here and here and here and here. When buyers come into the market because they think that the selling is overdone, well, they're going to have a hard time finding shares to buy because there's no remorseful buyers placing sell orders. So they're forced to bid a premium, and that makes us rip right back up through the levels. So gap down, refill the gap. Gap down, refill the gap. Now we can get gaps going in the other direction as well. Here we gap higher, right? And then we come right back in. And we gap higher and then we refill the gap. Now, why would this be? Well, it's the opposite reason. If there's no remorseful sellers trying to buy their shares back, then the sellers are going to have to sell at a discount, and that's going to cause a downtrend to occur, right? If it didn't trade here, then no one sold it. So when we get down here and the buyers start to say, this sell-off is overdone, I'm going to go in and buy, well, there's just not going to be a lot of sellers around. So this is the gap down. But on the gap up here, no one sold it in here, okay? So you're not going to have remorseful sellers trying to buy the shares on the way down. So that's going to put us into this downtrend. So we gap down, gap up, gap down. So this is important to know because you may want to buy things that are below a level that was a gap, because if other buyers come into the market, there's a good chance they're going to have to drive the price higher. So it's good to know where these gaps are. So once again, just to summarize, buyer's remorse can turn support into resistance. Seller's remorse can turn resistance into support. When we gap down really fast, there's not a lot of investors who bought who are going to be remorseful and trying to sell. So when other buyers come into the market, there's not a lot of sell orders around. On the upside, we gap up. No one sold at these levels, so there's going to be no one there's going to be no remorseful sellers trying to buy their shares back. So this is a principle of markets. We get a fast move up, fast move down, right? Fast move up, fast move down. And this technically isn't a gap, but it's the same principle. We trade through these levels so quickly that there's just not a lot of sellers. There's not a lot of vested interest, not a lot of people who sold who are going to be trying to buy their shares back. So we come right back down through it. So technically it's not a gap, but it's the same principle. Fast move up. When we revisit those price levels after the trend has changed, fast move down. Fast move down. When the trend changes, fast move up. All right, so I hope that helps everybody. Please sign up to our YouTube page here, and I will see you soon. Thank you, everybody.